Good evening, everyone. Welcome to an episode of a Stoked Podcast, Roundtable edition. This is the third roundtable I've done. Every single roundtable I've done has been about comics because I love comics. This one is special because I have one of my favorite comic book artists in the building. I'm gonna introduce him last, if that's okay. We're gonna kind of go. What is it? Counterclockwise, but then we're going to shoot up. We're going to go this way. So I am Javon Stokes. Welcome to the Stoked Podcast. Writer, artist, publisher, podcaster, aka the most opinionated man in comics. I hold that title. I love it. I would fight anyone for it. Not fist fight because I'm an old man. I'm grown. We've got a great show, great panel today. Today's topic is the state of the comic book industry. It's very broad for a reason because we're gonna tackle a bunch of different things because everyone here loves comics. Every single person here loves it because, frankly, this is not an industry. Like, you can make some money on it, but I would say 95% of the people that are in this industry do it because they love it and they love the art form. But before we get started, let's give everybody a chance to introduce themselves. So we're going to start. This is my left or right. This is my left. The camera's right. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Okay, I am TC Ford. I'm the publisher of United Comics. I guess my claim to fame is that I was the last editor-in-chief of Charlton Comics, which was back in the 80s. And now I publish with United Comics and doing a bunch of other stuff in addition to that, including trying to set up a new distribution network.
Okay, awesome. Now we're going to go down that way to the man in the beanie.
Hey guys, Mason Easley. I'm a freelance artist, big time comic book fan, big fan of Mr. Larson. So great to finally, say hello to you, sir. Been a big inspiration for me. So nice to meet you.
All right. Right below me, the coolest dude in comics.
Oh, okay. I get a title. Cause I was about to say, if Mr. Larson's your favorite and I can't take that spot, then I got to get a title of some sort.
Your second favorite, Wally. Second favorite artist.
I'll take it. Wally McNair, freelance illustrator, independent comic publisher, and a cool dad, cool husband. Happy to be here.
All right. We're going to go this way to Mr. Frank.
I'm Frank Martin, writer, creator. I have a book called Grim Space with Scout, a book called Macabre Motel with CEX, kickstart a bunch of books, and that's kind of what I'm all about.
All right, and then we're going to end with the man with the most distinctive way to hold a pencil I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen anything like it. To be able to make art with that, I'm gonna just shut up and let him talk.
All right. Okay, Eric Larson. I also make comics.
Oh, that is a very understated introduction. Very understated. All right. So again, I want to thank you all for jumping on. I know it's a bit last minute. Some of you guys I talked to last week. Others I talked to today, but I appreciate you all taking your time to jump on and have this discussion. Now, like I said, the state of the comic book industry. There's been a lot of discussion about comics are dying, American comics are dying, manga is taking over. All of these big hyperbolic statements have been kind of permeating the social media sphere, Twitter sphere, Facebook sphere, whatever you want to call it, over the last, I want to say, last 2 or 3 years, it's kind of intensified.
I'm going to say it's more 50 years because people have been talking about how comics are dying ever since I started reading comic books.
I think it comes in cycles.
It's been all through the 70s. It was like, oh, comics are going to be dead any day now. Comics are on the way out. And then the direct market came along and it pumped a little life into it. And then every time there's any kind of downshift, it's always like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. The world, what are we going to do?
So with that, before we get to the negative, I want to say, before we get to the negative, I do want to get everyone's thoughts on what they think comics is doing well right now. So I'm if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you, Eric.
Oh, well, well, clearly, some people who are doing comics for young readers have found a way. They are in bookstores all over the place and are doing very well with that. Bone is everywhere. Renee, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Terwilliger or something. Does a book called Smile, and just done a bunch of other books in the similar vein that seem to have gotten wide distribution.
You mean Raina Telgemeier?
I never. It's one of those names that I've only seen spelled out, and I've never heard a human pronounce before.
Yeah, Raina Telgemeier.
Sort of like we've been saying hyperbole your whole life, and then it's like hyperbole. What the hell?
Okay. Raleigh. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric.
That's doing well. Clearly, manga has found its way. There's a lot of stuff that's made its way into bookstores that was not there 30 years ago. 30 years ago, we had Watchmen and Dark Knight were in bookstores, and that was about the extent of it. Now we've got walls of manga. We've got all sorts of indie stuff, which is made it in there, and then there's permeated in the young adult section, and so it's all over the place in terms of that. Newsstands are dead. That is pretty much died a while ago. I think Archie still has limited distribution with some of their digests, but other than that, I don't know that there are spinner racks in 7-Elevens and anything like that anymore.
Yeah.
But I think the comic industry, in terms of aspects of it, is really thriving. And then you've got Marvel and DC who are just sitting there going, we don't know what to do with our beloved characters that are in movies in theaters all across the country. They can't seem to make a comic book that anybody's super excited about. But that's not my problem. All right, like I wash my hands of this.
All right, go ahead, Wally.
What's positive about comics?
Yes. What do you think comics are doing well?
Where should I start? I mean, for a guy like me, it was an outlet to learn and escape, the realities of the world that I came from. And I've been able to use comics to help other people do similar things, especially younger cats who are trying to figure out paths and things of that nature. I think, outside of that, like, it's opened up a whole new world for a lot of creators, for a lot of people that just didn't have a voice or weren't sure how to express themselves in other ways. So, I don't know. It's endless opportunities. Maybe not always the greatest money, depending on what you're doing and how you're doing it, but it's definitely. And I mean, I didn't get into it originally for the money. It just happened to find a way into making a living out of it. But in the beginning, for me, it was definitely an opportunity to express myself, to be creative, to tell stories that I felt like were missing, especially watching Milestone and Image Comics. That showed me as a kid, like, oh, there's something else. There's another way to do this. And so in school, I created comic book, back then, copy paper and things like that. But, it was just the ability to create and tell stories. So I think that's definitely one thing that's going well. And the community that exists, to a certain degree, there's a very strong community out there when it comes to comics that are worth talking about and worth engaging in. Similar to what Mr. Larson said, I think a lot of people are looking at Marvel and DC as the tell-all to whether or not this is working. And I don't think that that's the best way to figure out whether or not comics have an important space or an impact. So just my thoughts.
Okay. Frank?
I wouldn't say comics are dying. They're definitely evolving. And I love looking at my kids because I could see the next generation through their eyes. And as Eric was saying, newsstand is kind of dead, but it's evolving from a magazine into a more important form of literature. I look at a lot of the books my kids read, and they're real hardback, but they're like made for kindergartners, and they're comics. Like they're static, sequential storytelling. So it's like they love the medium. They just don't need to buy superheroes. They could see it on TV, and buy with video games, and the comics, those types of comic gravitate towards. They're reading other things. So as far as a positive, I mean, I still see the medium through their eyes. My daughter loves reading comics and loves reading so much stuff that I've just never even heard of. It's just, and so it's definitely alive. It's definitely well. It's just different, and I think different scares a lot of people. So that's why they want to shy away from it. I'm also fighting your logo here because I could just.
You know what? I'm gonna get rid of it.
No, it's all good.
I saw you. No.
It's fine. It's fine.
I saw you. Doing the.
But
doing the dance there.
I would say that
go.
the definite positive is that looking at my kids, I can see the medium thriving and doing well. But then if you look at somebody who's 40 years old who's been reading Spider-Man for decades, he might have a completely different opinion. So it's just a matter of perspective.
Okay. Mason, what do you think comics is doing well? I had to make sure to double down with you on that because I know where you want to go.
No, I mean, as a person who's self-published myself, I love how open it is. Like, if you can do it, you can put your book out there to the masses and see how it does and get immediate feedback thanks to the internet, thanks to Kickstarter, things like that. A lot less gatekeeping than there used to be. I remember when I was a kid, I used to go with my uncles to Chicago, and they would do like that, the editor line, and they would show their work, and they would get, people would just get like slapped down for the most minuscule things. Whereas nowadays, if you have an idea, if you can get a team together, you can make a comic, put it out there and see how it does. So for me, that's a big positive, because it's just so much more open than it used to be. And kind of to piggyback on what other people have said, just the fact that reading comics now is more acceptable to a lot of people. When I was coming up, I used to have my copy of Spider-Man, drawn by Eric Larson, in my folder at school, and I was kind of hiding it because people were because if you had a comic at school, you were like a nerd and you would get beat up or whatever. But nowadays it's you got kids with graphic novels with manga carrying around school, and it's totally fine. So I like how it's gotten more mainstream with a lot of people. Being into comics is cool because of Marvel, DC, Image, places like that. So so I think that's definitely what comics is doing well. Oh.
Get out of here.
There we go.
No.
I know the big joke was they used to take comic books and slide them between the Playboy and put them on the bookshelf so that people wouldn't know that you had them.
Well, see, in my case, I would just grab the Playboy. I would even look at it. Oh, it's a comic. No,
I was going to say, if you cared.
Mason, you reminded me that when I first started getting into comics, it was 1970s. And the big complaint then was that everything was superheroes and there was nothing else but superheroes. And now that is really broken wide open where you have publishers who don't do any superheroes at all.
Yeah.
And, many people who are coming into the business are now looking at what's been successful and go, well, Bone's not a superhero. I can do fantasy. Walking Dead isn't a superhero. I could be doing horror right now.
Absolutely.
And it's I can do anything. I can do a Western if I want to do a Western. I can do a war comic if I want to do a war comic.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Back then it was we had Sergeant Rocket. It was bi-monthly and mostly reprints. So it's holy crap, man. That's all we have.
Like I say, I just enjoy the openness of the medium now. I think it's just a lot more accessible for a lot more people.
Mm-hmm.
With webtoons for females and manga for young men and young boys and superhero stuff for us older folks who have a lot of nostalgia. One thing I like to do is I go into shows drawing commissions for people. I'll be draw me Wolverine in his his brown and gold costume. I'm like, you got it. And, just that nostalgia for people is a very magical thing. So,
Awesome.
but that's what I think is going great in comics is definitely that aspect of it,
Okay. TC?
I think there's definitely a bigger awareness of comic books than there was in the past. I can't tell you, when I worked in a comic shop years and years and years ago, people would come in and go, "Do they still publish Batman comic books?" And I'm like, they never stopped. The now you can buy things that are more than just superheroes, and because you got a lot of smaller publishers out there that have a voice. They want us, they have something to say, and that's a good thing, because the thing that I argue with people constantly about whether comic books is a genre or not, and I go, no, comic books is a medium. Genres are, war, Western, horror, all those different types of things. No different than in a regular paperback. And they're starting to see that now, and they're starting to pick up the things that they didn't realize existed before. There's women that come into comic shops with their kids, and the kids going, I wonder if they have the Walking Dead. The mother goes, they don't
Can't
make
hear
a
you,
Walking Dead.
TC.
They don't make a Walking Dead comic book. And I'm like, yes, they do. It's right there. That's where the movie is taken from.
You're fading out, TC.
Huh?
You're fading out.
Frank, I had to put you on mute. You got a lot of background noise.
Okay. Yeah, that might be part of it.
I know that. I know that pain. I know it. I understand. We got the family.
I'll try to speak louder.
No, you're good. You're good. It was the ambient noise. It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, no, there's definitely a larger diversity in comics than there has been in, say, like the last decade, and that's a good thing. More voices, more stories, more ideas. It's not just limited to one concept, ad nauseum. So I think that may be one of the things that helps the industry turn around a little bit.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with everything everybody said, but I do want to zero in on the fact that I've kind of made this point before on Facebook that there's never been a more diverse time in comics ever. Like, I can't even back and Eric, you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, even when they were doing Westerns and army books and even in love stories, there was nothing to the level of what's out now. You can find something for anybody, for everybody, and the proliferation of the indie comic book scene that has now, because I think it was dominated a bit, especially when Image first came out, and then you had Dark Horse kind of following suit, and then Valiant, it was still superheroes.
I mean, the 50s was huge for diversity in that at that point they would have all sorts of Disney comics and all sorts of different funny animal comics, and then you had Westerns were huge, and then they started doing monster comics towards the end of the 50s once the comics code had kicked in. But there was a huge variety back then, and superheroes had kind of were on the wane towards in the mid 50s. There, things really started to fall off. So it sort of superheroes started big in the 40s, and then as the time went on, they kind of fell off a bit. And you had titles like Captain Marvel Adventures, which at one point was the best-selling comic book, period. By the 50s, it was canceled. It was not doing very, very well at all. And
but I also think on the other side of it, too, the diverse part, like the actual creators, like I think there's
that too. Well, we didn't know for a lot of it. We didn't know what color anybody was. It wasn't until years later that you go, oh, I didn't know Ron Wilson was a black guy. I didn't know, whatever. Keith Pollard worked on every big mainstream title, and he was a black guy. And then there were just letterers or other people in the business you didn't know. You don't see the humans behind any of this stuff until you do, and then suddenly it's like, oh, okay, I had no idea.
Right. I forgot who I saw. I think it was MD Bright and I for years I thought M.D. Bright was a white guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know now. I mean, you see a name and you go, I don't know.
Right.
You know, Trevor Von Eden until you see the dude.
Right.
You don't know anything about the guy other than, hey, here's a name.
Right.
You know, and then there's people you thought, oh, I'll bet that was a woman, and so it's like, no, it turns out not. Turns out that
Can we start talking about negatives now?
turns out that Hillary Barta is a guy and Joe Duffy is a lady. So
Yeah.
Can we start talking about negatives now? Because I wanted to that leads me into a negative.
All right, Frank, you know what? We could. That's a very great. Thank you for the segue.
Well,
again,
I love how diverse comics are, but kind of leading off of that point is that I find comics now a lot. It's shifting, and this is not just comics. I think this is all fiction publishing. Is that it's becoming less about what the story is and more about who is telling the story. And people kind of gravitate a lot towards creators. And that's not a terrible thing. If you love a creator, you can hark on it. But a lot of time, I mean, people throw around the term identity politics, and it can become identity comics in a way where people want a specific type of creator to make a book, and that's what they want to lean towards, as opposed to just worrying about the story itself. Storytelling is becoming less about the story and more about the teller, which I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but it kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't particularly think it's a good thing, because where are they getting the writers from? I've heard all kinds of nightmare stories about that. A guy who got a gig writing at Marvel because the editor met him in a bar. And he had something to say, but it wasn't necessarily because he had an interest in comics. He just had something to say. And you can agree whether you liked what he had to say or not, but it wasn't comics. You know what I mean?
Well, I think if you're a one-trick pony where you're just like, hey, they hired me because I'm this or that, and you're no good, you don't have legs in the industry. You're not going to be around for
That's true.
a long time. It really comes down to, is this person telling compelling stories that interest me? And you can come from any walk of life. If you're telling a decent story and people are engaged in that story, that's really going to lead to longevity.
I don't want to disagree with Eric Larson, but I think I disagree with him.
Who you go, this guy's absolutely terrible and he's managed to have a 20-year career?
I'm not going to say 20-year, but I don't like name dropping people, but I could think of a lot of people. I could think of a lot of people who continue to write in comics, not necessarily because I think they're great storytellers, but they have great rapport with editors. They're liked by a lot of people. They're good team players, and they just continue to get jobs simply because of that fact.
But that sounds more like politics though. That sounds more like politics to me. And I get both sides of the conversation.
But you could, I mean, not to interrupt, but I totally am. I'm sorry for being a dick, but there has always been, it's my nature. There's always been untalented people who've gotten work from forever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Vinnie Coletta was a terrible inker that pencilers disliked with a passion, and he got all kinds of work because he was, fast and easy to get along with, and you turn the work out on time. And it's like, this guy shouldn't have been getting as much work as he was, and yet he was getting all kind of work.
The rumor is blackmailing people.
So Frank,
whatever it is, he somehow managed to find a way.
Frank, I'm going to challenge you though, Frank. I want to challenge that because when you say this person is only getting work because of this person, because they're a name or they know somebody or know somebody. I do agree with Eric that cream rises to the top, and 9 times out of 10, fraudulence gets revealed, right? Like you're not gonna have that much of a career, even if people aren't gonna keep following you if the stuff you're putting out isn't good. Like they're just not going to, like, unless it's some sort of overarching other thing, if we want to, You know, I was gonna say a name, but I don't want that group of people to come running after me. But they know who they are. You know, rhymes with Schmamik's mate.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about that, but I think in general, and I would say this probably started around the time of when Wizard and Comics Illustrated came out in was it early 90s?
Mhm.
That's when comic, you know, creators really became personalities, because, as you know, Eric was talking about, you didn't know what people looked like, or you really didn't know anything about them. Once that magazine and then the internet, all that started coming out, then yes, you could get to know, and I know who this guy is now, so now I can follow him because I like what that guy is doing.
Well, so real quick, I think what Frank is talking about, and Frank, if I'm wrong, correct me, please. I think what Frank is talking about is when they say, hey, you know, we need to find a woman director for this woman movie because only a woman can tell a story about other women. Or like when they say, hey, we need a black director for this black movie because only a black person can tell a movie about black, you know, that kind of thing. Is that what you mean, Frank?
I think that's one aspect of it. I don't think there's like a blanket statement that can cover every single creator in the comic industry or film, whatever. But on a case-by-case basis, yes, that's one example. As you were saying, Stokes, when people follow because they say, I like what this person has to say, that doesn't mean they like their stories. If they just like the nonsense they spout online, they can then support that creator. It doesn't necessarily make them a good writer.
But I think that's a minority, though. I don't think that's the majority. I think that's the minority. I think the majority of people who are reading comics read what they like because you're putting your money down for this. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's only so much money I'm going to put down just because I like what this person's talking about online. Comics ain't cheap no more.
I think there's a segment of people. I think there's a segment of people who will continue to buy Marvel and DC regardless of how bad they think the books are, because they like the character, they're in it for the long haul, and that's their team. They're fans, and they're going to continue to root for their team. Same way, I'm a Bucks fan. It's up and down, man, but I'm still rocking that Pirate jersey every Sunday. You know,
my condolences. But again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. But there is nothing wrong with that. But it keeps creatives in the game who might not be the best, or in some cases the cream does rise to the top. In other cases, somebody just bounces around from publisher to publisher and they stay active in the industry just because they've been in it for so long and people know who they are, and it doesn't necessarily make them good.
I mean, I would say
did I just silence everybody?
Well, no, I would say that again, to me, there's enough dollars and enough spotlight to go around. And if somebody can bounce around because you know, what's the saying? You need to be good, fast, or nice to work with. Is that what it is? You got to be at least two of the three?
Good, fast, or cheap.
Good, fast, or cheap. Good, fast, and cheap. And listen, you know, like Eric said, you know, there are people who they get jobs because they're fast and they're cheap. You know,
well, it's nice. It's good, fast, and nice.
That's what I thought it was. It was good, fast, and nice. Yeah. Right. So
if you're a super nice guy and you're super fast, but you're not very good, you'll get work. And you have to be two of the three. Right. So that's why people who aren't very talented can get work, because they're like, I'll be such a nice guy. You got to give work to our pal over here.
Right.
He's always buying us lunch.
I think that to get to the next norm, though, we have to go through these shifts. So even like what Mr. Larson was saying about from the 40s to the 50s, 70s, so on, like to get to the new norm, you have to go through some turbulence. So some of the nonsense or things that some people feel like is just to cater to certain things will fall off, and some of it will find a true norm where you will find, as you were saying, the cream rising to the top. So I think anytime we have a shift in things, shift in culture, shift in perspective shifting, whatever, there has to be some sort of turbulence to get to that next place. And if you don't have that, you never find a new quote unquote norm. So I think it's a necessary evil for us to evolve. Like, again, not to keep putting Mr. Larson on the spotlight, but if Image hadn't done what they had done, where would we be even in the conversation about comics? You know what I mean? So I think that every time these things happen, something has to change. And sometimes some of it isn't great, but somewhere in there you find greatness. And for me, if it doesn't appeal to me, I just tune out of it. You know what I mean? I just tune out and move on to the next thing.
I mean, there's a lot of, I'm in the same boat. There's a lot of books I don't read. There's certainly way more books I don't read than books I do. So if somebody's doing stuff that I don't care for their work, it's like that one's easy. Not buying somebody's book is a snap. Well, it takes no effort at all. I don't even have to leave the house to not buy your book.
Well, talking about turbulence and talking about the next evolution, right? I personally believe that comics is evolving. Like we are moving from one place.
I don't think it can help but evolve, though.
Well,
I don't think it can help. It's going to evolve regardless of what any of us might want.
Well, what do you think is the next? Like, what do you think is the next evolution? Where do you think comics is going now?
Digital.
Oh, that's a good one. I just think it's more and more and more diversity. It's got to, unless Marvel and DC get their act together, I think some of those books are just going to be falling off as the other stuff kind of expands and takes its place.
Mason, you said diversity? Digital, excuse me?
Yeah, I think digital is where it's going to go. I think the physical medium, especially like the floppy medium, I think that's going to eventually go away and get replaced by digital.
I don't think so either.
And
I think so at all.
And I think in the end, the physical is going to be the trade, the book thing, because that's more usable for more people than the old floppy format, which is more for like the collector side of things, which eventually is going to collapse on itself. Because right now, people aren't really reading comics as much as they're collecting it, mainly like on the floppy side of things. If you're buying a trade, you're probably reading that trade. Whereas if you're buying like all those variant copies of stuff, that's more on, that's more for collectors so they can flip it. And that's really what's driving
the problem with digital
is right now is variants, collecting, things like that. For example, if you look at Kickstarter, for example, most people now are doing variants because variants make money on Kickstarter because people are buying the variants where to flip them on eBay to make money. And the same thing's happening with Marvel and DC and all the variants. So, and I think eventually that's going to stop, collapse or whatever. And I think a lot of that small incremental reading section, the 22-page floppy is going to be digital because, it's just a better medium for that particular kind of reading than a floppy pamphlet, which is getting too pricey and easy to damage.
TC?
I wouldn't
That's where I'm at.
I wouldn't completely discount digital, but it's not there yet. You look.
Well, no, it's not there yet, but it's definitely.
Can I interject here and just say that the problem with digital is the same with digital with music, is that, yes, I can buy iTunes and get a nice, but I can also find it online for free, and I can share it on every one of my devices and not have the limitations that iTunes has. And if comics are digital, why would I ever leave the house? I can find everything online, and it's free.
Never need to pay for a new Marvel or DC comic again. They're all
You don't now. You can go and read them all now. But if that's the reason that the physical stuff is like, I've got this thing. A digital comic, it's never going to be worth anything in terms of, monetary value, I guess, for the collector.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, for like, if you're trying to collect something in order for money down the road, that's different than someone who's actually.
I'm saying, how do you make money digitally?
Long term.
How do I make money digitally?
You mean
you can get it
as a creator?
Yeah, as a creator, I'm going. Here's my book digitally. I want you to pay me $3, and so I can get it here for free. Why would I do that?
The trade.
Free is way better.
You trade it out. I mean, yeah, that's what they do on webtoons and webcomics for years. You have it online for free for years, you get a readership. Readers say, hey, you know what? I want this in a book form, and they
Well,
buy the trade. And they also buy your merch.
There's an irony to this. I don't know if you've seen recently the talk about how HBO Max and Netflix and Amazon Prime, all these platforms are taking movies off of the platform.
Yeah.
Like, right. Like there are people who said, oh, I bought this movie on whatever, and then they literally take it down. So now there are a lot more people going, I need to go buy Blu-rays and DVDs because the movies that they love are now disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And that to me is why the floppies, the physical media will never disappear.
Right.
Because the fact that I can buy this comic, this is my comic, it's mine, I got it in my plastic, I know it'll be there forever, as opposed to I bought it online, right? And oh crap, I lost my jump drive, or oh crap, something happened,
okay,
and then
but real quick
though,
I'm not saying that physical is going to totally disappear. I'm saying the floppy format is going to disappear, but the physical is still going to be there in terms of the trade, the book. That's still going to be around because books have been around for centuries. But that floppy format is not a format that's going to send. It's just not going to last much longer.
You
need
if floppy format goes away, I'm done. That's it.
No.
I'm done because when I'm making comics, I can do a 20-page story in a month and then have that come out as a comic book on a regular basis. If I'm sitting there looking ahead and going, I got to draw 140 of these things before something is in print.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck that. That's too much. I can't even getting over the hump in 20 pages is just this like, oh, I can't get over that. And once I'm on page 11, it's like, wee, clear sailing. But once it's 120 pages, you're sitting there going, oh, I got to get 60 pages just to feel like I'm going over. And then it's like, I still have 60 pages to go. Holy crap.
Well, and then it's also more expensive. But it's also more expensive, Mason. When you talk about somebody like who's a writer, like let's say you're a writer and you can't draw and you need to get an artist. Like if you're going to say to that artist, hey man, I need you to do 100 pages, but you're not going to get paid until we do the Kickstarter, and we can't do the Kickstarter until you do about 20 of them. And then you have to wait until after the Kickstarter is done to get paid for the rest, as opposed to, hey man, let's do these 22 pages. I'll pay you for these 22 pages. We'll go make money off these 22 pages, and then I can pay you for the next 22 pages.
Yeah,
that's why I don't think the floppy can ever, that single issue will never go away from a pragmatic point of view, from a pragmatic standpoint. It just can't.
So what you're saying is that format is designed for a certain creative team, because there are creative teams out there who don't rely on other people to do the work for them. They're like one-stop shops for everything.
I think it just opens up. I think it just opens up. You're going to have people who go, I love this format, and there's going to be people who like, I hate this format. You know, same with people who are making TV shows and just find their rhythm in doing the weekly half-hour TV show. There are people who that's just where their strength is. Everything's working for them when they're doing it in that format. And then they go and do a movie and it feels like the rhythm's off and it's not working for them. It just seems like they're stretching out a half-hour idea into a full movie and it doesn't work. I think that's where some people
let's say,
hold on, Mason. Hold on for a second. Frank is he did the yawn in the.
Yeah,
like you want to say. I saw it. I see you. I got you.
I'm not smart enough.
We got TC next.
I'm not smart enough to know if this is related, but I think when I think of floppies, I think of comic shops. I think of being a kid and going into the store and seeing a wall of floppies and just scanning, and that experience was pivotal. And the problem, floppies are great, but the problem is floppies don't have a place if comic shops don't have them. Comic shops are struggling a bit. So I don't know if this is the way the industry is changing or evolving, but I like the idea of hybrid comic shops that kind of pair with something else, either like a cafe or a comedy club, or doing something different so that they're not just relying on comics or collectibles or geek stuff. And I love that concept. I don't know if that's the way it's going to go in the future, but if floppy is to survive, the comic shop has to evolve with it. So
I actually think that's a fantastic idea. I know a gentleman is doing cuts in comics. He has he literally has a barbershop, and then he's gonna have comic books being sold in there. I think that's fantastic. I think that's a great
comic barbershop, comic craft beer, comic movie theater, whatever. I just it needs to evolve, and I think people are doubling down too hard on the way things were and the nostalgia, and floppies aren't going to survive if there's not a place to buy them.
Well, we get into different spots in this industry where everyone thinks it's a set it and forget it mentality. In other words, this is how you do comic books. This is how you sell comic books. And it has to be this way. And if you try to do anything that's different from that way, then it's never going to work. And so we have to stick to what the paradigm is. And so that's, I like the idea of hybridization for sure, but not every project can be hybridized. In other words, if you do one store that's a comic shop and a movie theater, and then everyone says, "Oh, that worked." Okay, so now every shop has to be a movie theater and a comic shop. You're going back to that set it and forget it mentality. Yeah. You have to have the diversification all the way across the board.
I agree. I think the bottom line is, and this is what Stokes was saying in the beginning, you got to love what you do. If you love RC cars in comics, you have a RC car in comic shop. Whatever you're doing, you have to be passionate about. You can't chase somebody else's shiny thing because you see that it works for them, because you're just going to fall flat.
I think people forget that everybody who's making comics actually does like to make comics. And you may read Marvel and DC books and go, wow, these guys are terrible. They hate superheroes. Like, no. These guys actually love what they're doing, and they love comics. They just aren't very good. Can
I challenge you, Eric, on that? Can I challenge you?
Sure.
Because and you've worked in the machine. So I think there's a big part of saying people aren't very good, and also saying people are being directed to do certain things. Because you can have a great idea and your editor can be like, no, we can't do that. You got to change it.
Well,
or there
is some of that, but there should still be a level of craft where you're reading it and going, I'm being entertained, even if it's a 60-part story or whatever. I mean, some of these things are grotesque. You should still be being entertained by that, whatever it is, whatever direction you're being guided in. You should be able to find a way to make it work.
Yeah, just because the coach is calling the plays, quarterback still got to execute.
That guy.
I mean, it's coming from a Bucs fan. I don't know.
That to me is a matter of.
I had Tom Brady for 2 seasons. Okay, you got to give me a break.
Listen, I'm gonna rib you for that. You see the shirt. I'm gonna rib you for that for the rest of the show. William Withers makes it. Listen, we suck this year. William.
You guys deserve everything that's happening to you, by the way. Everything.
It's okay, man.
Enjoy it, Foxborough.
He says. He says, what about webtoons or other format for chapters or stories and then making it a graphic novel? Which I think is what Mason was basically saying, to basically do something online and then gather it up and then you can send it out as a book, which to me that's a valid format as well.
No, I think that's a great format. And I think just having there being 100 different guys all trying to find a different way to make things work is really been beneficial to the industry as a whole. Like 50 years ago, we had the 32-page comic book format, and that's all there was. There really weren't any other options. 50 years later, now everybody's going, I want to do this way, I want to do that way. And all these guys are also learning from each other. There's people who now are raised on manga who are going, I want to emulate this manga format because that worked for me. And there's me people who are going, I was raised on Dogman by Dave Pilkey and I want to do that format. I love that format. And there's guys going, I read Cynical Man when I was, and it's just a little piece of paper folded in half or whatever. And it's like, do whatever. You can do anything you want and then do a collection at the end of it and it'll be awesome.
Right.
So, I love that there's so many different formats now.
We're going to jump into,
But
I was going to wait on this.
I would.
I was going to wait on this, but I know Mason loves this he loves this topic.
I do.
So we're going to get in this topic. He's got two that he has argued with me every single time I talk to him. All right. So I'm assuming this is Danny. Is manga taking business away from American comics? Go ahead, Mason.
Yes. I mean, yeah. From my perspective,
the question I have is somebody who reads manga, if manga did not exist, would they be buying Batman or would they just not be reading comics at all?
That's good.
Possibly.
I think they would be reading Batman.
Yeah.
You think they're just like, I love this format of sequential storytelling, and if this other thing wasn't available, I think
so. And I'm not an expert in the subject, but what I think is when I was a kid and I was reading Batman and Spider-Man and I got into it, manga, I don't remember it being as accessible or available or around or like only the really, really, really weird kids in school read it. And that's not the case anymore. It's got a much more widespread mainstream appeal to it. And people that like that type of storytelling are going to find it out. And right now, the big two aren't getting the job done. So they're looking elsewhere.
Well, listen, look, I'll just say this. I was an X-Men fan for 20 years. Big Chris Claremont fan, big Jim Lee fan, big Joe Matt fan. I now read My Hero Academia. I haven't touched an X-Men book in about 10 years because My Hero Academia does a better job of being X-Men than X-Men does now, because X-Men has really lost a lot of its power, a lot of its flavor, a lot of its soul. I don't know what happened. I don't want to get, I don't want to get that deep until everything that's happened over the years. But My Hero Academia does X-Men and Marvel better than Marvel's doing right now.
So is that so? I mean, to me, it doesn't sound like the problem is manga's taking anything. It's just that if what was there before wasn't doing a good job, you don't keep eating at the same restaurant if the food is terrible, right? Like you try to find something better to eat. I mean,
well, the issue though was that the restaurant was good for a long time, but then they changed their recipe, so I had to move someplace else. So that new place took away money away from the old restaurant.
So,
but if you're hungry, you got to eat somewhere. That's
right.
kind of the point.
Yeah. Right.
So
in that case, instead of spending my money on Marvel books, I spend money on manga now. So that's money that Marvel could be making.
I think competition's good. I think competition's good. If manga is so much better than the comics that we're putting out, then we need to step up our game and do a better job.
Yeah, do a better job. Like if the Patriots suck, they need to get a better quarterback, better coach. I'm just saying. Like,
you ain't lying.
Imagine a world where if you can imagine something.
Oh man, we lost on Wally's connection.
I can't imagine.
Oh, there he goes.
Oh, sorry, we lost connection. Go ahead, TC. I want to hear what I got to say.
No, I think it comes down to the story. I mean, I remember Batman in the 70s, and there were detective stories. Batman was that guy that could be walking down the street. He could just look at some guy and say, "Oh, that's Billy the Butcher," and he's got a rap sheet as long as your arm. But he knew all everything about this guy. If there was a crime, he had a clue but where to go. And now it's just about beating people up and romance. So it's not the same character in a lot of ways that it used to be. We're losing that essence of what made the characters cool in deference to like decompressed storytelling. Do you really want to read every issue where they're sitting in a coffee shop talking about life, the universe, and everything when they really should be going out and beating the crap out of somebody? There has to be a narrative that flows, that makes it worthwhile. I like those kinds of stories intermittently, like A Day in the Life from Teen Titans, where nothing, you're getting to know the characters that way, but not every single issue. And that's like you were saying with X-Men. It's broken down to that now.
Yes.
So
And honestly,
something?
I would argue
Go
it's
ahead,
not just the
Mason. I'll
story,
wait.
it's the art too. Like,
Yeah.
not
I'm
to-
going to
you know, not
I'm
to-
going to stop you. I'm
not
gonna
to
stop
no,
you.
wait.
No.
Let me finish.
Hold
Let me finish.
Wait.
So back when Larson and the crew did Image, one thing that was about Image Comics was that the art was popping. Like the art would pop out the page and blow you away. And they were doing that at Marvel too. At Marvel Comics, they were doing I got some 90s Marvel comic books right here. And the art is incredible. Like the images coming out of the page is explosive. It's very visceral. It's exciting to look at. You read Marvel Comics now, it's very like TC said, it's very much like two people at a coffee shop talking for 30 pages. No one wants to read that. And also,
and the images are over.
And also on the manga side of things, they're doing that kind of artwork, and they got it from the Image guys. Art's popping off the page, it's explosive, it's exciting.
No, stop.
That's part of the problem.
We have to stop. We have to stop pretending if the standard for manga, the artistic standard for manga, is the same as the artistic standard for American comics. It's not. It's not.
Come on,
because number one, you can have a manga be black and white, and people will be perfectly fine with it. But you cannot put out a monthly black and white Batman book for a consistent basis, and people be okay with it.
But
DC
did that. They did
a 4-issue miniseries, and they treated it like it was special. It wasn't the detective. It wasn't Batman. The standard for American art is significantly higher in America than it is for manga.
My counter would be The Walking Dead. Because it's black and white.
Exactly.
I think there's a unicorn.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
But again, that's an indie. That's an indie book. But it's not superheroes.
Yeah, I know, and it's sold like.
It's also really good art. It's still better than most of the manga that I've seen.
Have you actually seen My Hero Academia? Have you seen art of that book?
I do. My daughters read it.
Okay,
I've seen it.
All right. So you tell me that guy, he couldn't get a job at Marvel Comics right now.
I'm saying that the artists that are on the Marvel books now, the standard is higher. As a whole. I'm not saying that every manga book isn't drawn well, but I'm saying
a lot of them are drawn very well.
Some are drawn incredibly well, and some are drawn terrible.
That's any.
But I would say,
we don't get the terrible stuff.
Yeah.
But that's also my point. We're seeing the absolute cream of the crop for manga stuff. Though.
Yeah, no. We
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Frank. Go ahead.
I think the reason this discussion is so difficult to have is because there's no smoking gun. There's no one thing that we could just point to and say that's the issue. It could be the manga is taken away. It could be that the stories are not as compelling as they used to be. A big one for me, I think, is because there's just so much superhero everywhere that I think the MCU movies do Marvel better than the Marvel comics. So my kids can get their Marvel superhero fix just watching Disney Plus. They don't need to go to the comic shop. So all of these little things combined can contribute to the whole. I think we're all right, is what I'm saying.
Also, I would throw into that mix of things is there is simply way more product than there used to be.
Oversaturation of the market.
When I was a kid, Marvel put out like 30 books. Now they put out 100 books.
They put out 30 X-Men books now.
Those books can't help but cannibalize each other. Where everybody has a finite amount of money when they go into a store. They're not going to be like, I'm getting everything that comes out this week.
That's not a big two issue either. I think indie comics are cannibalizing each other too, because there's just so much all the way down the ladder from the top tier publishers to the small presses. There's just so much material.
There's this way too much stuff. You can't possibly afford it all.
Well, so I want to ask a group question. Do you feel that when you're buying a comic, do you feel like if the comic cover doesn't match the interior, does that hurt the book? Because to me, it hurts the book. You know, it's almost like a bait and switch.
I was going to say.
Started though.
That's been going on.
Forever.
But
Lou
that's
Fine
mostly-
doing covers in the 40s for crying out loud.
Yeah,
Whatever.
but I mean,
Way before I was born.
like there's times where like I'll pick up a book and the art looks amazing on the cover, and I look at the interior. The interior looks like trash.
It's literally never been a time in comics where it's been like that. And I'm not talking variant covers. I mean, just like the regular cover.
Yeah.
What?
Your beloved X-Men. Your beloved X-Men that you just talked about.
You
Hold
mean
on.
this one?
Yeah,
No.
Yeah, who's on the cover of
Okay,
that?
it had that for a while, but let me
Hold
tell
on.
you, when Byrne was doing the book, Dave Cockrum was doing most of the covers.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Who's the artist in that?
You talked about
Yeah.
Joe Mad. You
This is what I'm
talked about
talking
Joe
about.
Mad. Hold on, Mason. You talked about Joe Mad, right? How many issues of when Joe Mad was doing his run where he didn't do the interiors, but he did the cover? Mind you, I followed that Joe Mad run.
I don't know. I didn't buy those books.
That's
the
the
interior. I
point.
didn't buy the book.
So you understand what we're saying. This is something that's been happening
Yeah,
forever.
I didn't like it back then either.
Even with Image Comics, like
But the issue
and
now
Eric
though is
was
that-
there.
but the issue
even
now is
for
like
Eric.
a lot of books are doing that.
Mason,
You know,
this is a
most-
pet
most
peeve of
of our
mine. You
guys-
know what bothers me more than a different cover artist than interiors? What bothers me is when they have like a big reveal on the last page of the book and they put it on the cover of like let's say they have a villain who's like the big hidden mastermind behind everything. Oh my God, it was Dr. Octopus all along. They put it on the cover. It's like,
Well, you mean
why
like-
would you?
Well, you mean
why
like
would you
right
do
here?
that?
I like that. I was very happy about that. I mean, because like, you know, because like you get to the end of the book, I mean, the big reveal is incredible. Look at that. That
Yeah,
was
why?
a masterpiece.
I hate when they spoil their own books. I'm like, why would you do
So,
that?
I
We're
was-
I have,
was
I
very
have to
happy.
agree with Frank because I grew up reading books in the 70s where you got this, cover that basically made you go, oh, I got to see why this is happening this way based on what they had in the cover. Oh my God, Superman's gay. Oh, and so you go and read the book to find out what happened, and then you find out that it was.
We're getting into the granular now. We're getting into the weeds. Let's come back out the weeds.
But that comes down to creators and editors and
Right.
everything else. I mean, I can control that on my own book where that doesn't happen at all.
Mhm.
Where retailers are like, I want to know how I should order this thing, and it's like, well, I got my own. There's going to be something coming up. I'm telling you, order a bunch of these because it's going to be great. And it's like at a certain point, it gets really difficult to be able. If you're killing off Superman, you got to tell retailers, look, we're doing this thing, and you should buy copies of it because this is big.
Okay.
But
Danny has provided another question. Are indie comics even important in the industry?
Absolutely.
I think that this is a weird question,
Well,
but
which indies are we
you
talking
need
about?
to
though?
define
Which
what
indies?
indie means.
Yeah, exactly.
Indie
Yeah,
means
what
different
is
things to
indie?
different people.
Is Image Comics indie? We've been around for 31 years.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, Invincible.
Some people think
Problem.
anything that's not Marvel or DC is indie, which to me is not.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case.
So I go with the top 5 publishers, and then below that, I consider indie. So
Everybody's
what-
got their own definition.
yeah.
But who's even in the top 5 at this point?
You got to look
I
at
mean,
everything there.
I know Marvel
Marvel,
DC
Dark
Image.
Horse, Image, IDW, I guess. Yeah, because Valiant's not really around much anymore.
So I would say indie is.
But is
anything-
Archie an indie comic?
Well, personally, I would say anything indie is anything that is financed by the creators and financed and owned by the creators.
Well, that's Image Comics. Every one of those
That's
books.
Image.
Is
I
financed.
agree. I do think I think Image is indie.
I
to
think
me-
I think probably more like sales below a certain level would probably be considered indie.
I love how we were before we even answer the question, we have to define the terms in
Yep.
the question.
Yeah, I don't
Very well.
agree with
I
allowing.
mean, then the
sales.
question becomes: are comics that sell less than 4,000 copies of those?
Yeah, that's what I was going. I don't
I
think
mean,
that
that's
sales
what-
dictate whether you're indie or not. Because even in music, there's indie musicians that do very well financially,
Mhm.
but that doesn't make them not indie. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think that
Yeah, I don't know
sales should
what
be
that
taken
means
into
either. I don't know how is one an indie musician? Are you've got a guitar in your hand. How are you playing it different as an indie guitar?
Well, no,
player?
if you were indie musician, then you're not
Under
signed
a
to
label?
a major label.
You're not signed to a major label. Okay.
Yeah. So that's
Well,
So you can be
essentially
doing
what-
the same damn music. You're just not signed to a major label.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, book your own
Regardless
gigs.
of what the term indie is, I would say the answer to the question is yes. There's always needs to be some type of story or some type of outlet for media at the bottom pushing everything up, because without it, it's just, I think things would fall down. So
Well, also,
regardless
I mean,
of what-
those are the guys who are rising up and then becoming mainstream. You know, it's like they don't go. You don't start on Spider-Man or start on whatever the big book is. You start as this small guy just trying to figure shit out. And after a while of finding your voice, somebody, or you're constantly pitching it to guys above you. I know when I broke in the indie comics, doing small black and white comics. I self-published when I was 19, for crying out loud, and it was just scraping and trying to get in a better position so that you're able to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
That's like saying, is the minor leagues important to baseball?
Yeah, of course they are. Yeah, without the minor leagues, should colleges have sports? Well, if they didn't, how is anybody
Michael Jordan wouldn't have a place to play.
Well, I think indie comics are important at very much, piggybacking on what you guys are talking about, they are now what they're basically internships, right? They're kind of internships. Like you cut your teeth doing your indie book, and you keep plugging along, and either the indie property that you have gets a big break, or somebody sees you in one level up, and maybe they kind of give you an opportunity. And especially when we don't have, say, like who was I talking to? I think I was talking to Larry Hama about how he'd be sitting next to Neil Adams, and he would have like a younger artist would be sitting and working with Neil Adams and learning with Neil Adams. We don't have that as much anymore. We're all learning the medium as we do it. Like we're all learning as we go. Like even for myself, when I'm doing a page, I might go, oh, that's how you do it. And then I've learned something new. And then you're also cutting your teeth with the marketing and selling and everything. So we're getting a sense of the business side that really didn't exist, for people at our level, because, even during the Image heyday, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of you guys who had the studios, they would find talent in, here, there, and everywhere. Mm-hmm. Whereas it's a lot easier now, like to have somebody can have a book and show you, hey, I know how to make a comic book. I think it's a very interesting time. I do think the problem with that is you have the quality on a lot of books isn't as great as it should be, because we're all learning as we go.
The bar for entry is very low.
Oh no, there is no entry. There is no.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can anybody.
There is no bar. You just walk.
There is no bar. You can just print your own comic.
Right.
Go to a printer and print it, and then go to.
Mason made the point. Yeah, Mason said there's no gate holder. There's no gatekeeper.
So back in the day, in the 70s, 80s, we had apprenticeships. I came in under Dick Giordano and Frank McLaughlin. And so, I'm working on stuff, and if it wasn't right, they right there, boom, fix that, change this. The reason this doesn't work is for that reason, but you learned as you went. Now you're kind of working in a vacuum. The newer guys, they're looking online, they're seeing the books that are there, they're emulating what they see, so that they end up having books that are look like fan fiction initially until they kind of get the hang of it.
Yeah, that got everyone right there.
Figure it out.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm not going to talk about how, Eric Larson turned down Heat, for Image. I'm not going to talk about that. He doesn't even remember. He doesn't even know.
So
I'll show it to you one day. I'll show it to you. Oh yeah, I remember that. What do you guys, looking at the industry right now, what would you guys change? Give me one thing, because we could do 50 million things. Each of you give me one thing that you think if the industry did this, they would be in a better spot. I'll go with
you say
Frank.
the industry, you mean Marvel and DC? Are we still about that?
The comic book industry in general.
I've had a lot of back and forth discussions with people about this. And I think, and there needs to be a forum for this. It can't just be chaos, because that's pretty much what Twitter is. It's just chaos. Fans have questions. They want answers for a lot of the things that Marvel does or DC does to their characters. And it's basically a free-for-all with fans bombarding creators, asking them questions, trying to get them to justify certain decisions. When, as we talked about, a lot of it's editorial. But I equate it to when you have a sports team, and a sports team messes up, the quarterback, the coach, they sit down at a press conference and they need to answer tough questions and justify the decisions that they made. We don't have any of those things. We don't have somebody to sit down and really ask the editor of Spider-Man, why did you decide to kill off Miss Marvel in a Spider-Man book? Nobody has really provided an honest,
breaking up there,
thoughtful answer to that. Am I good now? Hello.
I heard you. I heard everything.
Oh,
Yeah,
somebody said I was breaking up. Basically, what I'm saying is press conference for comic creators and editors. Just some responsible forum other than Twitter to provide answers to our questions, because people want honest, real answers to their honest, real questions, and there's really no place to do that for tough questions. You know,
that is not going to go over well. Mason.
That's kind of what the letters pages used to be after a fashion. You know, like the people would write in letters and say, I really like the story, but, you know, why did this happen or why did that happen? And then the editor would basically explain to the best of their ability, you know, why they made the choices that were made for that particular story. Yeah. And we don't have those letter pages anymore.
Now on Twitter, they just, one question that they don't like, they just hit block, and nothing gets resolved. It just foments and people get more angry, and it just creates a toxic environment.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask this question. You don't have to answer it. Do we have that for any other form of art media? Just think about it. Okay.
I would say, yeah.
Mason,
yes.
Go ahead.
I would say
all
absolutely. Right. I think
Eric.
Actors and directors get
can
tough
you hear us?
questions all the time.
Eric, can you hear us?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Okay.
Yeah, I hear him.
All right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mason. What's yours?
Well,
I want to come back.
Was I all frozen or what was?
Say that again, Mason.
No.
Was I frozen for a minute?
Yeah.
You were frozen.
But you're back.
All right.
We got you now.
On my end, you guys were all frozen. I'm like, what the hell?
Oh, okay.
What was your question, Javon? What's the question?
The question is, if you could change one thing in the industry, if you personally can set and say, we're going to change this, what would you change? The comic book industry as a whole. It could be Marvel or DC. It could be whatever change you want to make.
I really don't know. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. Because I mean, for me, the comic industry is so vast. Like, everyone's doing something different. I can't really say what needs to be fixed. I mean, there's things that the big two do that I don't agree with, but I mean, I don't think there's anything they really can do at this point. It's like, Titanic's taking on water, so let it sink. So, I mean,
Let it burn.
It's inevitable. It's like Thanos with the gauntlet. It's it's going to happen. The snap's the snap. You can't take it back. So, let it ride,
man. You are quite the negative guy, man.
I
Go ahead, Eric.
Question: if I could snap my fingers,
yes,
I would say, if you're going to release something in a format, whatever that format would be, it needs to be comprehensible and entertaining in that format. So if I am releasing a single comic book in the 32-page format, that thing needs to make sense from front to back and be entertaining from front to back. Because when I'm getting these long, extended stories that are going on for 15 parts, an individual part is going to end up in some barber shop somewhere, and it's going to make no sense to the regular person who's just reading it on its own. Because I go into a comic store and I will sample various books. I'd be like, oh, I haven't read Batman in forever. I'm going to read an issue of Batman. It's like, oh, he's on the beach talking to Catwoman. What the hell, man? I don't know what's going on in his life. I don't know. There doesn't seem to be anything other than they're just kind of hanging out, having a good time. That's cool. But just as I don't get necessarily the context of what's going on here and what's going on in his life. You're not catching me up to speed, and it can be done in a very brief, succinct kind of way. But there's times where I'm going, I don't even know who the good guy is here. I don't know what the dilemma is here. Why these guys are fighting. I don't understand why they're fighting. What does this one guy want and this other guy want? Why? What's the conflict about? I don't understand. I just think comics need to, if you're going to go put, like I say, you don't have to do the comic book. If you get a 140-page story to tell, don't break it up into 20-page sections. If you can't tell them in 20-page sections, do it as this other thing. But if you're going to release it as 20-page increments, those things should make sense.
Okay. You know, actually, I have that same criticism about a lot of indie books, more so than Image and Marvel. Like, there are a lot of indie books that I read, I will pick up and I have no idea what's going on. And no one tells me anything about anything. And I'm just like, okay. But okay, go ahead, Wally. Thanos snap, man. One thing.
All right, there's too many other things for me to snap and change. So I wouldn't be trying to change the industry. My focus would be just to continue getting better, growing with the art form, and opening up opportunities for others, man. Like I don't have the energy to try to change the entire industry myself personally. I might snap my finger and make a new restaurant to eat at.
All right, TC.
Well, I mean, we could talk about the structure and all that, and episodic is something I've been arguing about for months online, because I can't find that many people that can tell an 8-page story cohesively. And, you know, that used to be the bread and butter of the comics. You know, you'd have 6 different stories, 8 pages a piece. Now it's one story and it's 30 issues long. Like Eric was saying, it's just, if you pick up one chapter, you don't have no idea what's going on. My focus with changing the industry would be to put us in more venues. There's only a finite number of comic book shops out there. During the 90s, you had gas stations and laundromats carrying comic books. We need to find a way to get back to that, so that all these books that we're producing, because there's a lot of different little publishers out there, but they're not being seen. If you go into a convention, you got to see that guy that published that particular comic. If you go to another convention and he's not there, you have no idea if he put out another issue or not. And how do you find it? If they're not listed in Diamond in the order catalog, you have no idea that the book even still exists. So we need to expand our distribution above and beyond the comic book market. I'm not saying throw out the baby with the bathwater. We definitely need comic shops, and that should continue. But we also need to expand where people can actually pick up comics. There's areas where to find a comic shop is like a 40-minute drive or even longer. So they just go, forget it. I'll either order online or I'll just get the free comics that I can download.
Okay. All right. These are all really good Thanos snap decisions.
Yeah, well, the reason that comics stopped being distributed on the newsstand is because they were losing money all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is because they stopped doing stories that made sense as single issue stories. And it's not like these stories have to all be one part. It's like, no, you can be part of a bigger thing, but that chapter still needs to have beginning, middle, and end. and feel like there's something satisfying in this 20-page section of stuff. And it just seems like there's not enough of that. And you can throw newsstands out there and go, hey, we're going to do newsstands again. But if that material's there and people aren't being satisfied by those stories, they're just not gonna. It's not gonna fly.
So my question is, I mean, can we say that distribution is an issue when you have the digital option where you can get digital anywhere, or there's Amazon, where you can buy pretty much anything online? I mean, you can't buy floppies online, but you can buy trades and books through Amazon, or you can get things.
You can buy floppies online.
Yeah, you can.
At Amazon? Does Amazon sell?
Sellers put them up there.
Okay, well there you go. So can we really say that distribution is really an issue when you can get it? I mean, you can order it from the comfort of your own home, anywhere in the world.
That's great if you're a millennial, or even just internet savvy in general. But a lot of those older guys, are terrified of computers, so they'll go.
Those people are dying, so let's. They'll be gone.
Yeah, but we still got
millennials are also old. I don't want to. I'm a millennial. Yeah. I wake up every morning, my back hurts. Okay, so I don't.
Yeah, I think you mean the generation under us, or 2 generations.
I don't know if it's Gen Z or whatever. I have no idea anymore.
Yeah, I don't know if distribution is the issue.
Because it's like everywhere. I mean, you get a comic anywhere now.
I do think distribution is not the issue. It's the marketing. Awareness and marketing are, to me, the bigger issues. And it kind of ties into the last question or the last topic of the night, which is social media and its effect on comics, the positive and the negative. I'm curious to hear all you guys' thoughts on it. I'm gonna go first this time. I do think it's especially with the advent of TikTok. I was talking with TC before you guys got on. Like, everyone kind of laughs and we kind of roll our eyes at TikTok, but there are a lot of people in comics that are selling a lot of books on TikTok because you can buy directly from it. Like, you do your little TikTok and you have the link up, and then people can just immediately hit it, as opposed to going to Amazon, searching through it, or going to the website, searching through it, stuff like that. I do think that is I do think that's going to be a big part of the evolution of the distribution and the awareness of comic books. Let me go with Wally. I haven't gone first with Wally before. Wally, what's your opinion on the marriage of the industry and social media?
I don't get into people's relationships, Javon. You said marriage. So I'm very, very careful about that. But for myself personally, there's a balance. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for 2 parts: conventions and social media. I utilize both because I grew up in an era where, using musicians again, they toured, and that was how you got in front of the people. So that's what I did with conventions. And as social media grew, you start jumping into the world of social media. It's another way, depending on how you use it, to connect, to tour. Now, of course, in today's market, we see social media is kind of also strangling us at the same time, because you build up an audience and then can't reach 10% of them half of the time because the algorithm or whatever it is that might be throwing up a roadblock. So, marketing has existed since whatever, you know what I mean? And so social media can be a strong place to market, to promote, to put yourself out. But there's still the conflict of oversaturation. There's still the conflict of figuring out how to change with the tides and the waves. So, I think there's a good aspect. Anything used the right way or in moderation can be a powerful tool. But there is the other side of it where you have to compete with so many different things on so many different levels, not even just the other creators, but the system and the infrastructure itself. Facebook literally, Instagram literally hides links and pulls things so that people can't find them. And that's a pretty tough situation. But for people that don't get out, or that don't do conventions, or that don't do other types of events, that still may be the best way for them to reach somebody. So,
okay, Eric.
The good and the bad is, The good is fans can really get to know you, and the bad is that fans can really get to know you. Because it's like once you start tossing out your political views or your opinions on this, that, or the other thing, you can put your foot in it, And back in the day when we were all anonymous and we didn't have a kind of, that presence that we have, you kind of felt all these guys were your pals because, Stan was saying all sorts of nice things in the bullpen bulletins, and all the letters pages were full of happy people, and it all seemed wonderful. And then, once the doors are thrown open, we can see, oh, that's what that guy looks like. Why is he wearing that shirt? New England Patriots, what the hell? Or whatever.
Oh, sorry, I just had to yawn.
2-9 record.
That you can say, you can be good. People can get angry at each other because you don't like a movie that other people like, or you don't like a politician that somebody else thinks is the cat's pajamas. It's you can really divide your audience by getting into all this different stuff, whereas that didn't happen before.
Okay.
So there's good and bad, but there's at the same time there's people who are like, oh yeah, I hate that motherfucker too. You don't like him. So yeah, I want to buy your book because you're always shitting on guys that I don't like. So awesome. You're on team me, whatever.
TC?
I think that with social media, you're increasing your awareness. So there's that. The downside is that if people aren't aware of you in the first place, then how far are you going? So that's the only downside to it. Oh, and Instagram is also doing what you're saying with the TikTok, where you can click a link and sell your books that way. Now with the advent of video and stuff like that, that's another good place I think to go to try to sell material.
Okay, Frank.
I hate social media. I think it's terrible. It does have some benefits. I like the fact that I can network and connect with other people, like-minded people. And yes, you can touch base with readers, but for the most part, I see a lot of creators and they're talking about like expanding their brand. They want to take selfies and take pictures of the food and themselves at the gym. But I don't want to live my life thinking like, oh, I haven't posted online. People need to see my face more. I don't think that that's the best way to go about things. James Tinian just did a Substack where he was talking about his own struggles with social media. And he said the problem arose is because social media was supposed to be a personal thing. And at some point, there was a blending between the personal and the professional. And I think that runs into a lot of problems for people. It needs to be, at least for some people, I feel like there needs to be a separation. I'm going to try to separate myself from social media. I think it's a time suck. It's an emotional and mental suck. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it. I understand its benefits for people. And in our society, it's become a little bit of a necessity, but it's a bit of a cancer on the mind. So not a fan.
Mason?
I think, that as all things, there's yin and yang to it. There's a good and there's a bad. I think that you have to use social media if you're trying to build an audience, outside of, doing conventions, doing face-to-face stuff. Social media is a very efficient way of building an audience. But I also think, the dark side of that obviously is, you have a culture now where people make it their goal to be negative and destructive and try to bring everything down. And unfortunately, that's part of social media as well. The recent Marvels controversy is a prime example of that, where if you have one opinion this way, you're that person. If you have another opinion the other way, you're that person. Whereas some people might just say, you know what, I thought the movie sucked. Or, it deserves exactly, the amount of money that it got. And I'm that guy, but I don't hate women. I actually like the MCU. I actually like Brie Larson as a person.
I don't like Brie Larson, but go ahead.
Oh,
My
I love
fault.
Brie Larson, man. She's
I mean, I don't know her personally. She just doesn't.
I don't know her personally either, but man,
they cast her for Captain Marvel. She looked like a soccer mom to me, and
I
wasn't. She didn't seem threatening enough as Captain Marvel for me. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
But beyond all that, though, it's like we're not allowed to have a certain opinion on certain things, and I think that's the bad side of social media. It's like you just cannot like a movie anymore. It's like if you don't like a movie, you're now on that team. Whereas it's like, nah, man, I'm still on your team. I just didn't like that particular movie. Like, like the entire Black Panther situation where they said recast Black Panther. And, it's like, well, recast him. Oh, well, you must hate, the guy who passed away. No, I just think that we need a new person to play Black Panther because that character is needed in the MCU.
I think half of that is human. Half of that's human nature. And then half of that is just they've designed social media to be that way.
Yeah, and that's right. And that's very true.
Negativity is what spurs action, not
and what scares me about this, though, Frank, is that, we have an example of a guy, in the comic sphere who made a lot of money being extremely, extremely negative. And now he's being held up as, oh, well, look how much money this guy made. Yeah. And, man's book is trash. Let's be real about it. It's, the book's trash, but he has a massive following because he is a negative person. He spews negativity, and
can you type in the private chat who that person is?
I know what he's talking about.
Here,
absolutely. So for me, it's one of those things where like
why you gotta talk about me in person like that?
No. I'm just really worried that that's going to be viewed as how I make it in this industry now is by being as nasty as negative as possible, and that way I can make millions of dollars doing a comic or whatever else versus actually putting in the work, putting out quality stuff, and having an honest opinion. Because I don't think that particular person's opinions are all honest. I think some of that's playing up to the audience to make more money. So.
But and I will say this about that kind of framework there. I do think that is all that stuff is temporary. All that stuff is temporary. Like at some point, people begin to kind of see through the BS. You can make a career doing negative things. I mean, Howard Stern made millions being a negative guy, right? But his shtick didn't necessarily work for everybody. Like there are a whole bunch of clones of Howard Stern that didn't do anything. So I do think sometimes it's things that are very specific to that one person, and then 9 times out of 10, that one person he caught lightning in a bottle, and it's not going to work for Joe Blow over there. So again. It's all about how you look at it, how you frame it. You can focus on the negative people and be frustrated with the negative people, or you can just focus on the good things. And like I don't spend too much, me personally, I don't spend too much energy on people's work who I don't like or who.
And now you pay me as a person who's just being a hater. No,
yeah, I mean, Javon, I'm gonna disagree. I love to hate read things.
Well, you got more money than I do. I don't have the money.
I don't have to. They're digital. It's all free online.
Well, then you got more time than I do. I don't have time.
Here's the key. Here's the key. I write reviews like for TV shows and stuff. So if I get to watch the new Scooby, the Velma show on HBO Max. I got to watch that thing all through the first season. It was great, and I got.
Then
paid
you got paid. Did you get paid for it? All right, there you go. I mean, I would do it too. But
getting
the
paid
point
to hate
being,
watch stuff is the best.
Right. The point being that most people don't have the time, or most people follow what they like. Not a lot of, there are people who will sit and watch something that they don't like. There are people who go watch every MCU movie and say they hate the MCU, but they will spend their hard-earned money to go watch the MCU and then complain about it. There are people who hate Marvel and DC, but will buy literally every book and then complain about it. But I think most people gravitate to things that they like, and they spend money on things that they like. And I think that's what I like to focus on. Eric,
take
did you
the
want to say
optimistic
something?
approach there.
Well, I mean, listen, man. If I had a negative point of view, I couldn't continue in this industry. It's just too. It's really hard to get. It's really easy to get dragged down.
I have a negative view. I'm doing just fine. I'm loving it.
I mean,
it's great.
Yeah, I think you can have a negative point of
I
view
feed off of it.
as long as you can rise above that. In other words, I go online and I complain about certain things that are happening in comics, but then my next step is to say, well, this is what I think you can do to change that or make it better. And that's the part of the dialogue that you're missing in a lot of these guys that just complain, because they don't have an answer to the question. They don't have they can't posit a solution.
Yeah, but it's also a difference between complaint. Like there's also a difference between people who have complaints or criticisms and people who are just assholes. And I think Mason was mentioning some of the assholes as well.
Oh, that's true. I've
Exactly.
run up against a few.
Because again, I mean, but for me, and the person I'm talking about, for me, it's like you say that everyone in comics sucks. You're going to make it better, and then you put out a worse product than what's out there. And to me, that was just like, wow.
Well,
I mean, that was my opener. I was like, wow, this guy is absolutely full of.
This goes back to what I was talking about. Where
all right, last one, Frank. Go ahead.
Well, every situation is different, but this goes back what I was saying, where at that point the product is irrelevant.
Yep.
Whatever it's at that, it could be a T-shirt, it could be a sticker, it could be a button. In this case, it just happens to be a comic.
Right.
The worst comic ever made.
All right, and on that note, I appreciate you guys jumping on. This is a really great conversation, about comics, because again, we all love the medium. We are all trying to advance it in one way or another, in our particular way, and we all enjoy making products in this industry. So thank you guys for joining.
Javon, I hope New England does not get a great position in the draft next year. I'm sorry, I had to say it before we go.
I mean,
well, if they did, they blow it.
Hold on. I know you hope for $1 million too, so you ain't gonna get that.
I probably get $1 million before y'all get a good.
Hey,
team.
Listen, don't be mad. Don't be mad. We still got 6. Okay,
hey,
we're gonna go
real quick. Hey, Javon,
no. We're not doing this. No.
They fire Belichick?
Listen, I'm already in my.
It's a yes or no question, man.
No, they shouldn't fire Belichick.
Wow.
All right, so I want everybody to tell everybody where they can find you and what you got coming up next. So we're gonna go TC.
Well, we just started a coffee line, and we have a link on the line that allows you to also buy our comic books. So I'm gonna leave with that: www.actionherocoffee.com.
Wow.
Okay. All right, Wally.
Yo. Oh, you want me to say something? My bad.
Where can they find you? What do you have coming out next? Stuff like that.
So at Wally V, as it is on the screen, WOLLYV. You can find me there for the most part. We have a collective hardcover coming out for the Bequest Studios, which contains all of our number ones in January, and a few other projects I'm working on here and there with a few other companies. But that's about it. That's what's important.
Okay, Mr. Larson.
Uh-oh. Whatever. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm just spell my name right, and I'm on Facebook and Threads and Blue Sky and whatever else I can find my way onto. I do a book called Savage Dragon. It ends up in comic book stores much of the time. I also do a book called Ant on occasion, and it's the same deal. SavageDragon.com, ImageComics.com, whatever else.
Awesome. Mr. Mason. Mr. Mason.
Yeah, you can find me at masoneasley.deviantart.com. You can find me at me_Mason Easley on Instagram. I have 2 projects coming out next year. My Kaiju comic is coming out early 2024, and a follow-up to my trade is coming out in summer 2024. And I'm going to try and do some conventions with you, Javon. I'm after last year, I'm a little burnt out by it, because I don't need the money, but I do like the companionship. So we'll see how it works out. But those 7-hour drives, and like sleeping on hotel floors, man. It's I'm
Hey.
getting too old for that.
Hey,
I'm
I need
I'm
the
Gen
money.
X, not millennial, so
I
I
need
can't
the
be sleeping on
money.
hotel floors.
I always need the
But we'll
money.
see what happens. But yeah, that's where you find me.
Right?
I'm Frank, the writer, right here. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. That makes things easy if you want to find me. I got emergency. I got a jet, but it's been fun chatting with all you guys.
All right.
Thank you for the
Awesome.
90 minutes of awesomeness.
Awesome. And I am Javon O. Stokes. You can find me if you like Eric said, you type my name in right on Facebook and Instagram, you find me, as well as you can go to www.visuallystoked.com to pick up my books. And then early next year, I've got 2 books coming out, Heat number 3 and my first horror book, Irreconcilable. Looking forward to that. So yes, thank you all for joining. I've only got one more show for this year, and then we're going to shut it down for the holidays. So I think I got in about 2 weeks is the last show of the year. But thank you all for joining. Thank you all for watching a Stoked Podcast, creative talk with creative people. Y'all have a great weekend.